Welcome to the Paper Fold. I am your host, Sarah. Before I get to my guest today, I just wanted to remind you all that submissions for the Noted at Noted Product Awards are open through April 18th, and you don't have to be an exhibitor to enter. We have 10 great categories, including one just for retailers. Show us your card wall. For more information, head on over to thepapernerd.com. I have a dedicated post on it, as well as a button running along the right side that you can click to get started. My guest today is Erika Firm, who, as you'll hear, has worn many hats throughout her rather prolific career. I first met Erika when she was running her own brand, Delphine. At that time, she was one of probably dozens upon dozens of indie letterpress brands, but her colorful approach to the rather rigid medium differentiated her from the start. When she closed that brand, Erika shifted her focus to more of a collaborative approach with existing brands, big and small, taking advantage of any opportunity to create work without having to warehouse physical product. For that reason, Erika was an early maker to distinguish herself on Minted, where she's won 128 awards and counting so far. Meanwhile, Erika has literally collaborated with gift and stationery brands from A to Z, from Anthropologie to Zazzle. As I mentioned, Erika has a really amazing eye for color as well. While she is very partial to green, she has a great sort of innate understanding of unexpected color combos, which, combined with her flair for styling, makes every styled shot she generates both memorable and magnificent. Whatever role you play in stationery, you can benefit from her wisdom. And with all that said, it's not really surprising that it was Erika's once rather exclusive birthday parties held off-site during National Stationery Show that evolved into the unforgettable paper parties that became the must-attend event and must-get goodie bag of National Stationery Show. You can imagine I have a million questions for her, which we'll get to right after this. Hey, paper peeps. So by now, many of my listeners are familiar with the force of stationary nature, better known as Girl with Knife. But if you aren't, time to change all that. From the first moment I spied her booth at her New York Now trade show debut in 2019, I was smitten with this cutting edge range that the world was calling out for. We all just didn't know it yet. Everything is nimbly collaged to life, slice by careful slice by the talented and exquisite Alicia Castaldi. This stylish collection of cards, journals, and notepads that have sprung to life under this fashionista's exacting knife is sharp, snarky, sleek, and occasionally very sweet, just like that BFF who would love to hear from you right now. For that reason, whenever I get my hands on Girl with Knife merchandise, I hoard it and use it most sparingly. Alicia recently launched Gift Wrap, and if you're already a fan of her range, you're familiar with her patterns and quality, but these super thick sheets elevate any gift from off the rack to atelier. Her recent releases of Midnight Botanical, Rare Creatures, and Chasing Dreams bring the total styles that slay up to 10. And if you're like me and that you fall in love with a range and want to reside in that world, you're in luck. Alicia recently unveiled Knithouse, which was one of the few good things I can think of that came out of 2020. That was when Alicia shifted her operation from LA to this newly renovated concept home in Palm Springs. This completely private, walled and gated estate features panoramic mountain views and countless luxe surprises. Take a tour through its magnificent blush pink doors at www.knifehousepalmsprings.com or find it on Instagram at Knifehouse Palm Springs. Good luck getting your jaw off the floor as you take in this perfect California adult playground. These glamorous digs are available for photo shoots, film projects, special events, and short-term rentals. But just as importantly, all that exquisite Palm Springs flora and fauna have inspired Alicia's soon-to-be-released journal and notepads. She tells me that they're also expanding into home decor, which I, for one, absolutely can't wait to see. So now that you've glimpsed this wonderful world, you need this cutting-edge lifestyle brand in your life. Find Girl with Knife in hundreds of shops across the U.S. and over half a dozen countries. Alicia and Girl with Knife have also been featured in New York Magazine, LA Business Journal, BuzzFeed, and of course, Stationery Trends. I've run her work there countless times. Alicia was one of our 10 designers to watch in 2020 and proceeded to live up to that designation when last May, 2 out of her 3 nominated cards took top honors at the Noted and Noted virtual greeting card competition. Then, for our winter 2021 issue of Stationery Trends, Alicia designed the 10 designers to watch frontispiece for us. It is something else if you haven't seen it yet. Also, as of 2021, Alicia is represented by none other than the Daniel Richards showrooms in Atlanta and Dallas. Dan's eye is renowned in this biz, so his representing Girl with Knife is unsurprising, but it also means that this brand needs to be on your design radar stat. Check out this beguiling range at the recently refreshed girlwithknife.com. Right now, the theme is Season of Fierce, and I think we can all use one of those about now. I guarantee your stationery will slay. Erika, welcome to the Paper Fold.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm just going to get into it. You've gone on quite a design journey in the long span of time I've known you, from running a small stationery and invitation brand, Delphine, to licensing your own work and working with other makers on their own branding. Everything you do is obviously informed by your eye for color and design. Now, everyone thinks that they have the best taste, but yours I find really exquisite in that I always love whatever it is that you come up with. How would you describe your aesthetic?
Oh my, first of all, thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you. You've seen everything that's out there, and for you to say that, that's really special. Thank you.
You always dazzle, like whatever it is, like whenever I would get like a Dropbox from you, I'm like, oh boy, I know this is going to be good. And it's never what I thought it was going to be. And that's, to be able to pull that out of your hat over and over again is no small skill. So
thank you. How would I describe my aesthetic? I would say, first of all, it's more analog versus digital. I try to work on the iPad and in vector, and I just always feel more comfortable working by hand. So I would say all of my work, no matter the medium, has a little bit of the hand-drawn element to it. It's pretty naive. I'm not precious. I'm not like very technical. I'm not a technical illustrator. Or artist. I've actually never taken an art class.
Wow.
I've taken a few Skillshare classes here and there in the past year or so because pandemic. But before that, never took an art class. So I would say it's like naive, it's imperfect. I learned pretty early on that I wasn't going to be putting onto the page what I had in my head. And so I had to learn to just accept that. And now I just embrace that. So like everything's a little bit wonky and that's okay.
That's great. That's great. It's funny because I would not think, if you asked me to describe your aesthetic, I would have come up with something totally different. But yet what you've said completely makes perfect sense. There is a very organic quality to your work. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. To me, color is such a big component of it, but we'll get to that in little bit.
Yeah, you know, I love color.
I know. And I will wax eloquent about it till the cows come home. And I think you would join me. Over time, I mean, what year did you start Delphine? That was late.
I started it in 2003. And the first time I sold it, like, you know, brought the product public and I sold wholesale, was 2004.
Okay.
My son was 4 months old, and I went to New York with a friend, and we, during the stationery show, and I couldn't afford, and I didn't really have enough product to, you know, have a booth. So I did an off-site event. I invited buyers, store owners, and we had got a hotel suite. It was really fun. So that was 2004, but I started the company in 2003.
Oh, wow. I bet your suite was fabulous. I remember going to, I mean, obviously it's been a long time, but I mean, they use like hotel, I mean, that's not the right term. Suite parties during a market used to be like very common. And it's something that, I mean, well, maybe they'll come back when we have markets again. But your brand, you know, your brand evolution, like when I think of Delphine, I think of like a lot of like vintage imagery sort of presented in more of like a modern color palette. How would you say your brand or your aesthetic has evolved over since those days when you first started a paper company?
I would say the organic quality and the interest in nature is still around, and my interest in color is obviously still around. I love color. But when I started Delphine, it was a very deliberate choice to do something that was a slightly modern take on what traditional stationers wanted. So at the time, I was in a very traditional role of like wholesale. So my customer essentially was the store owner. And at that time, it was pretty traditional. So I went with like a kind of a romantic, traditional aesthetic.
Yeah. And I think something important to note also is that at that time, when you started Delphine, letterpress was everywhere. Every other brand at NSS was a letterpress brand. So distinguishing yourself in that space, you know, might have been your major challenge. And you always did. I mean, your brand looked fresh and didn't look like anybody else at the show. You know,
I really experimented a lot with color, where at the time letterpress, you know, because of the process itself, you're essentially limited to one or two colors, ink colors. And so I really looked at the paper as that third color to add some dimension and depth to the product. And so I like my favorite day of the year was the paper show, not stationery show, the paper show, like for the paper mills had a show in San Diego once a year. And I would go and I would just get like a giant backpack full of swatches and take them to my pressman and be like, what do you think about this? Could we print on this? And we tried, God bless him, Larry was awesome. He would print on anything. He would try anything. So like, you know, we tried all the different papers and we ended up with some really fun products. That were colorful and everybody else was printing on white.
Right. No, everyone was, I mean, it was all white paper and white envelopes at that time. And that was just sort of like where the aesthetic was. And that was already a huge improvement from where stationery was like previously. Hey, Paper Peeps. So Kitty Meow Boutique has been a fabulous client of mine for a while now. So hopefully many of my listeners are familiar with not just the dazzling wares from this Chicagoland house of paper, but also its amazing founder, a force of nature better known as Catherine Hildner. This mom of two, with another scheduled to arrive soon, has created a most intoxicating stationery range. I define the Kitty Meow aesthetic as polished and very smart. Think of the sharpest outfit you own that you feel like $1,000,000 in, but in stationery form. Everything from typography to envelope choice comes together to pack a most enticing punch. But this range is not just about the surface. It's about honoring those connections with those we care about most. And you'll see once you visit kittymeowboutique.com that the wares are divided into witty and sweet because, as Catherine puts it, sometimes you feel a little saucy and sometimes you don't. But Kitty Meow Boutique is so much more than just another pretty face in the marketplace. The empowering messaging found on her cards, invitations, journals, coasters, art prints, and enamel pins elevates the range into something that makes you feel not just seen, but good about yourself too. Everything is essentially a little lift, visually and emotionally, for not just those you love, but you as well. Not only is Kitty Meow available for your personal shopping needs, it's also available wholesale to all those shops looking for something new with which to excite their customers. She's on Fair. Visit kittymeowboutique.fair.com and get your shop started. Finally, I think what I love about Catherine most is that she is really all about living your best life, as you'll see for yourself beneath the education tab on her site. She offers KMB Signature Collective, a mastermind for women in the product-based business world who have a love for paper and giftable items, who have an idea and a plan, but need guidance and support to be successful in their efforts. I so agree with Catherine. It's so important to be surrounded by like-minded women and leaders who are willing to put in the work to lift each other up. For that reason, it's not a course. It's a friggin' transformation, people. And Catherine has also started my second favorite podcast, Dreams to Plans, with another brilliant force of nature, my girlfriend Renee, to elevate your daydreams to actual, tangible plans. Oh, and if you're on Clubhouse, follow Kitty Meow so you can tune in to her weekly room Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called Small Business Savvy, Insider Secrets You Need to Know. I checked it out for myself last week, and it was just the dose of inspiration and confidence my day needed. So get those good vibes going at kittymeowboutique.com and tell them Sarah sent you. To me, the other thing that distinguishes your work, other than your really amazing sense of color, is your styling finesse. So you have such an amazing touch. Like I know several years back, I wanted to run one of your clients, Revel and Company, on the cover of Stationery Trends. And I remember you sent me like a huge Dropbox of images. And my biggest problem was figuring out which one I liked the best. Which was not usually the problem. Usually the issue is finding one image I like. And I can remember, like, I made our graphic designer mock up like 10 of them. And like, we were, like debating which one we'd like better. And so is there anything that you've learned about styling products for photography over the years that you think is a common mistake?
Well, first of all, that cover was like one of the highlights for sure of my entire career. Thank you so much.
I love that cover.
And I'm so happy you picked the green one.
Yes, and I should add that right now, when I'm interviewing Erika, she is sitting in front of some bookshelves in her office, impeccably styled with all green books and accessories. I want that shelf.
Just about everything I own is green. It's kind of ridiculous. The desk, which you can't see, is green. So for styling, I would say one of the things I see a lot is people trying to make their composition really perfect. Like they're trying to line up everything just so. And invariably something is going to be a little bit off. And so your eye is going to just go directly to that thing that's a little bit off. So instead, I try to incorporate like an organic quality and a movement to the photos. So if it's obvious that everything isn't supposed to be perfectly lined up, then if something's a little bit off, your eye is not going to see it. And it's just going to embrace the whole look. So I would say that like one thing that one error I see is people trying to be so perfect.
Right.
Another thing is people trying to completely eliminate shadows, which end up making the photo just look completely flat and unrealistic. So I use a lot of things might look pretty flat in my photos, but I actually use a lot of little lifts. So just like a little matchbook or like two little, even if it's just like 2 or 3 little pieces of cardboard underneath something, just to give everything a little bit of dimension, and then to add shadows. And I try to incorporate at least one organic quality or element in most of my photos. So whether that's like, literally a leaf or a flower or a shell or a piece of coral, something obviously that relates to the subject of the thing that I'm photographing, but try to bring a little bit of nature in. It just makes it a little bit warmer to look at and a little bit more realistic.
And a lot, and literally alive. It has that, that element. And, often in your photo, often when I review your photos, it's like, I look at stuff I take for granted, like that leaf or that twig or, whatever it is you put in there. You look at it a little differently, like, oh, wow, she elevated it. And it's just really interesting. I think, within the past, I don't know, decade or so, as minimalism sort of, is a major statement, I saw a lot of photography moving into like these very clean flat lays, that you mentioned. I really feel like, storytelling is more important than ever now. And that, when you infuse photography with any sort of narrative element, it just makes it alive and engaging.
Totally agree.
Yeah. I mean, you've always sort of seemed to sense this. It took me, a long time working in the industry to finally like have my eureka moment. When a maker is approaching their line and wanting to tell a story with their product, like, how do you think, what do you think is a good way to approach that sort of challenge if they're not used to thinking that way?
It's a lot like what I learned in journalism school and writing is to know your audience. So when I am photographing, let's say a birthday card, I think about not only who that birthday card is for, but it's more important who's buying that birthday card. So who's, what that person that's buying that birthday card, what are they like? What are they doing? Are they writing it, in the backseat of the car really quick? Are they, at their, beautiful styled desk? Are they at their vanity? Like, what's going on in that person's life? And then I do this a lot with Revel and like pull in props that relate to the person who's writing the card.
That's
incredible. It's a little bit of a story, so like I'll pull in like a teacup and like a tea bag and, doesn't necessarily have to do, stamps and pens are always awesome in photos of stationery, but also like what's going on in that person's life at that moment. So like, are they drinking tea? Are they reading a magazine? Are they on the couch? Is their pet there? Like incorporating, and it doesn't always have to get into the photo, but it helps make it look a little bit more realistic. And then the viewer can imagine themselves.
Right. The suggestion. Yeah. The suggestion of an idea, a narrative, it definitely, it tells a story and it grips people. And yeah, like you said, it they relate. Oh yeah, I usually sit at my desk and I like to, sit down and enjoy a cup of tea while I, write a birthday card.
It can also be aspirational too. So, I styled one there's one in particular I'm thinking of where it was a card, and I think it was a birthday. I don't remember if it's a birthday card or a thank you card or something. But I was thinking about a woman who is sitting at her desk, and she's at her vanity, and she's got her jewelry is there and her lipstick is there. And it's like, that's not me in real life. Like in real life, I'm like writing the card, like on the way to the post office. But I wish that I had the time to sit down and have like my little stack of books and my tea and my lipstick is there, and I'm getting ready for the party and putting on my pearl necklace or whatever to go to the event. So, it can be aspirational too. It doesn't necessarily have to be like totally realistic. Because if it was totally realistic, it would be like filed in the backseat of a car.
Feel like searching through, old emails for that mailing address, and just a harried state. But which could be its own sort of fun one too, like dashing off the last minute birthday card. Like how funny.
Some brands, like that would absolutely be perfect. I can think of a couple off the top of my head where I'm like, oh, you should totally do that.
Like how funny is that? Like getting that card, like that would be the best idea for a, some sort of product line or promotion, like getting that card to the post office so it can get to that birthday person in time, or, like that could be like a really fun sort of story to tell. So moving on, you've worked in so many domains of the industry. I mean, you had a brand, you license, you style other brands. What you have a relationship with Minted where you started showing your designs on Minted really, really early on in the platform. Am I forgetting anything you do?
I also have, I'm not doing it now since Alexander, my son Alexander got sick a few years ago, and I have phased it out since then, but I also ran a branding company.
Right.
So, logo design, corporate identity, branding, that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, I'm sorry. I know about Alexander. I'm sorry to hear about that. I'm sorry you had to put that aside. I know it's difficult for you. What a loss for companies. I would want you to do my logo if I was doing a logo again, because I feel like you bring a real sort of thoughtful, studied perspective to brands. And, I've worked on enough projects where like, until there's a logo, the idea of the brand is sort of fluid. And I think often when you get that logo is when you're like, okay, we can do this. This is who we are. And, that sort of thing, like getting to that first step is like a really, really important step.
I always would tell the clients that I was working with too, even if they weren't ready for necessarily a business card or a sticker, I would tell them, let's just do like a really small order. Let's order 25 business cards, because once they get that printed thing in their hand with their logo on it and their name on it, invariably it's like this light bulb moment for them. Like, oh, this is real. Like it's that emotional connection that then the client gets with their own brand. That's, I found, really powerful.
Absolutely.
Just like when I was doing weddings, like when the couple would get their invitations, they're like, oh, this is really happening,
Right. It doesn't seem real until you see it in print. I got to say, I look at proofs of every issue of the publication, and we do everything. We made the transition a long time ago to everything is digital. And the book still does not seem real to me until I actually get the physical copy and I get it in my hand. Like it's just an abstraction while it's on the screen. You obviously have your hand in like so many domains in our industry. Like, what is really resonating for you now? Like, what are you working on that you're most excited about?
I'm most excited always about Christmas. It's most of what I do these days is licensing, and most of that is for holiday. But recently, just like within the past year or so, I started to think about how I can use a lot of the art that I already have. I mean, I have hundreds of variations of a Christmas tree that I've drawn. Like, how can I use that for other things, other than stationery, other than a photo card, other than, a Christmas card or Christmas wrapping paper? So I started thinking about that and kind of tested the waters with some drop ship items last year, like mugs and drinking glasses. And I really enjoyed doing that. And so now I am designing a collection. I don't have a client. I don't have, it's not for a partner. I'm just designing it and hoping that somebody will see it and like it and want to produce it, because I'm not producing it because I don't want to have inventory ever again the rest of my life. But I'm designing holiday or winter kind of themed tabletop items. So
Nice.
Dishes and glasses and napkins and tablecloths and things that not necessarily disposable. I mean, I'd be okay with that too, but I'm thinking more something that you keep and you use like for a whole season, not just, I don't want it to be like super fancy and precious that you just use it on Christmas Eve or New Year's Day. Something that you would, use for like maybe 6 months.
I think that's great. I mean, it was so funny as you were explaining it. I was like, she better do textiles. Like, thinking to myself, like, it's got to be on a tablecloth and, runners and I could totally, and trivets, I could totally see that. But I think there's also, for years, the holiday decor market was growing. I do think there is like a nice space for like holiday keepsakes that come out every year. I'm Jewish, but my dad's second wife was like celebrated Christmas just in what I think of as like the Martha Stewart mold. Like she really went all out, and it was like quite an experience for me. They married when I was like 6, so it was like a whole new world for me. But I can remember being very excited seeing the same stuff appear every year. Like I remember she had a Christmas skirt she used to wear on Christmas, and it was like a white felt skirt and it had a little Christmas tree applique on it. And like, I think there's real space in there for keepsakes, for people to bring things out. And especially as you move away from disposable stuff, it really becomes part of the family's heritage. So I say go for it.
Yeah, and I personally like to use patterned and colorful things on my table. So, even if you mix and match it with white or, more solid or plain stuff. But, I'm not really interested in it being something that's like super Christmassy. Like it has Santa.
It doesn't have to hit you over the head.
Yeah, more seasonal.
Right.
I live in a 4-generation household. So between my mother, my grandmother, and myself, we have, I don't know, approximately 100,000 sets of dishes. So because we all love them. So, but we switch them out every couple months or so. We're like, oh, what are we going to put in the cabinet, for this season? And
that's great.
It's just really fun. And I mean, I know that that's not realistic for most people, and that's, I enjoy it, and I am going to design some stuff that I want to have myself because, I go out shopping and I see a lot of the same stuff, like, Santas and like a very, what I would consider like almost like retro traditional of motifs. And I'm looking for something personally that's a little bit more organic, a little bit earthy, a little bit green. Like not red. Hopefully green and not red. And so I decided to just design it for myself.
Right. Why not? I know.
Want to produce it.
Do it yourself. If what you want is not out there, just make it yourself. It was like 2013, 14 when I started hearing like the Halloween season. Like I love the idea of an autumn season. I love the idea of a winter season where, like, again, it doesn't hit you over the head with, a Santa or these like holiday specific icons, but it's just that vibe and that mood. And,
yeah, it's like the pumpkin spice latte, right? Like, it's like fall.
Exactly. Which is now apparently an official American season.
Yes, it is pumpkin spice latte season.
So something I also wanted to ask you about, I just saw you mention it like in passing on Facebook. I know, you're all about holiday right now, but you do several wedding invitation suites on Minted. And you said something in passing, like one of your suites was your top selling design on Minted. Do I have that right?
No, not exactly. My personal best-selling, not best-selling.
Right, not
Minted. That would
of your stuff. It was it's a wedding invitation. It was a wedding invitation suite. Is that right?
Right.
So to me, I got really excited when I saw that, because to me that means, okay, people are planning weddings again.
Yes.
Are you seeing that?
Absolutely. I would say in last week of February, first week of March, it was like the switch got turned back on, and I'm seeing not just save the dates, but I'm seeing like actual invitation suites coming through almost every day now through Minted. So people are buying the invitations with the reception card and the RSVP card. Whereas I would say, since, obviously because of the pandemic, all that slowed down. And so I was getting like save the date kind of orders, or, I forget what they're calling it, like refresh the date or hold the date, or, like
postpone the date.
Hold, please. I was getting those kinds of orders. But yeah, it seems like, and the orders are, they're not just like 20 invitations. People are ordering 50, 75, 100. So people are planning. And I would say people who are ordering their invitations now are most likely looking at like June or July weddings.
Mm-hmm. 2022. Oh, wow.
No, I think people are planning, and I think many of them might be people who had to postpone last year.
I mean, it's got to be. I can't help but feel bad for all the brides who we're getting ready to make that plunge.
What a logistical nightmare too, and then
like it's not stressful enough getting married. Like, let's just throw a global pandemic into the mix.
Just throw the chance of death at your party.
You thought your mother-in-law was bad. What do you think, pulled that magical switch at that time?
I think it was the vaccine news.
That's awesome.
I think that's what it was. So I think, around February, they were vaccinating. They were starting to vaccinate people who were not just healthcare workers. And I think once it started, people were like, oh, it's going to be, it's still maybe a little bit optimistic to think that you can have a regular, ballroom type wedding in June, but
I haven't gotten any invitations.
But the chances are a lot better than they were, 6 months ago.
Absolutely. And I've also heard, the other thing I've heard is like the micro wedding trend. You might have a couple different events now for, 20 people at each. And that's really, really exciting to hear. I'm really heartened by it. I'm just starting to work on my summer issue of Stationery Trends. One of the articles is like, our wedding's coming back. So now I want to interview you for that.
Right. Well, I'd be happy to talk with you too. I mean, as you know, I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston, I don't know what the stats are now, but for a while Charleston was the number 2 wedding destination in the United States. Number 1 being Disney. So, which I think doesn't really count. Like that's not the same as a destination. So anyway, that's more of a mindset. That's more of a mindset.
Right. That's more of like a passion that's gotten a little out of hand.
So Charleston being one of the top destinations for weddings, obviously the wedding industry was hit super hard here. But as of a couple of weeks ago, our governor announced that all of the restrictions were gone completely for gatherings. So it's perfectly 100% legal at, today to have an event with 500 people. Wow. Whether that's prudent or not, I don't think that's a good idea, but it's legal. And so it's happening. Like the weddings are starting to happen again here already.
Wow. Wow. I mean, yeah. I have a lot of feels about that. I mean,
Same. Same.
That's a lot to unwrap. But if I was going to do a destination wedding, I would pick Charleston because you guys have, there's so much there to love. I mean, the weather, the proximity of the sea, the classic, just I don't know what to call it, the layouts of all the squares.
It's very beautiful. There's lots of parks and little pathways and little secret passages and it's charming. I mean, I would say if you had to say Charleston one word, it's charming.
Wow. I mean, I've been stuck in Cleveland for over a year now. I'm ready to pack my bags.
Anytime we have a guest room.
Oh, thank you. And I know you have enough china to feed me.
Yes.
So your birthday overlaps, not surprisingly, with the old dates of National Stationery Show, the second week of May. And so your rather small but really exclusive birthday gatherings evolved into something much bigger, Paper Party. But obviously your birthday is still May 19th. Are you going to do a Zoom Paper Pea party this year?
That is an excellent idea. Maybe. And if I do, you will be the first to get an invite. But I am more excited to see everybody in person.
It was weird when we were preparing for this interview. It came up like, when did I last see you? We walked New York Now in February 2020 together. So it's been just over a year since we've hung out. So hopefully in 2021, fingers crossed, we can like meet up and walk a couple rows together. And
I would love that. I love that.
Me too. Well, thank you so much for coming to the Paper Fold, and hopefully our paths will cross in person soon.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Erika, for coming by the Paper Fold. And thank you so much for listening. As always, email me at sarah@thepapernerd.com with anything I can do for you. And if you are liking what you're hearing, please subscribe and leave me a good rating and review. I can't tell you how much that helps. Thank you so much, Paper Peeps. Please stay well.